We've got breaking news here on CBS Sports HQ. Arch Manning has committed to Texas. Manning, a five-star recruit, #1 player in the class of 2023. He just visited Austin this past weekend following trips to Georgia and Alabama earlier this month. But he has landed with the Texas Longhorns and coach Steve Sarkisian. We take a look at the recruiting rankings for the 2023 class, and you see Texas right there now with a five-star recruit in Arch Manning. They have five four-star recruits also in that class at number 19. I'm sure that there are going to be many more recruits jumping on board now that Arch Manning is signed and committed to Texas. And for more on that, let's bring in Steve Wiltfong, Director of Football Recruiting for 24/7 Sports. Now, I know you just spoke with Arch Manning's head coach at Isidore Newman. Tell me a little bit about what Coach had to say in that conversation.
Well, Coach Nelson Stewart said from the beginning of this recruitment, from the first Zoom that Arch Manning had with Sark, it was a real connection between the two. And he said that he thought the authenticity and the way they got to know Arch, and then the extension of A.J. Milwee, the quarterback's coach, and just how aligned him and Steve Sarkisian were, and even Kyle Flood in the run game. All those things really made Arch feel comfortable. And I know for a fact he took 4 visits to Texas. Important factors in his decision were, a place where he feels like he can play in big games and win big games, play for a coach that's going to develop him to be the best player that he can be. But I think also he wants to have a great college experience. I think he was looking for a great college town. I think he really loved Austin and the experiences he had within the city of Austin and what that offers a college student in general. So I think Texas checked all the boxes. He took 4 visits to Texas, took 4 visits to Alabama, took 4 visits to Georgia, and now he's in the fold for Steve Sarkisian and company. And it's a big commitment for them because he was the only quarterback they offered and recruited and talked to the entire 23 cycle.
Obviously showing that he was their #1 pick when it came to who they want in 2023. You just talked about the commitment there. Is this the biggest commitment in Texas history?
I don't know. Time will tell. It's certainly the most newsworthy one, with the power of the name that Arch brings to the table with the last name Manning, the Kennedys of high school football, or the Kennedys of football in general are the Mannings. So certainly from a news standpoint, but I mean, look, Texas has landed #1 players before. They've landed #1 quarterbacks before, and that's a program that we've seen win a national championship. This is one that keeps the trajectory of the program going in the right direction. I think that when you look at what Texas did in the transfer portal last year, what they did on the recruiting trail, they went out and signed the best offensive line class in the country. They signed a terrific front 7 class on defense. And now they're backloading here in 2023. They go out and land the #1 player in the country, another #1 quarterback in Arch Manning. So now you have Quinn Ewers, you have Arch Manning going into the same quarterback room. That's a pretty potent combination right there, in addition to the others that are already in that quarterback room as well. So I just think that the trajectory of this Texas program is very exciting. It already was, and now this 2023 class is really going to get rocking and rolling here with Manning in the fold.
We just had a list up there of the top 10 prospects on the class of 2023. How much better is Arch than the other quarterbacks in that 2023 class?
Well, I actually think that, the race for the #1 quarterback in the country is certainly exciting as well. Arch is our #1 guy right now, but that it's not his paragraph and then all the others. There's some really talented arms. Malachi Nelson, who's committed to USC, Nico Iamaleava, who's committed to Tennessee. And you have guys like Dante Moore and Jaden Rashada, who are uncommitted right now. There's several quarterbacks vying for a 5th star in this class. And Arch Manning is the guy at the top right now, but those others aren't too far behind.
We're looking at the rankings, of course, at that 2023 class. Where does this put Texas's class in those rankings? How much movement do you expect to see from this change?
Well, I would imagine that he's going to bring some guys with him. I gave a 24/7 Sports crystal ball to Jonte Cook after this news. I think that they'll land one of the top 10 receivers in the country, in-state guy, and Jonte Cook. Ultimately, they have a great chance to land one of the best running backs in the country, Cedric Baxter, out of the state of Florida. And again, this is going to make Texas a little bit more exciting on the trail with Arch Manning now in the fold doing some peer recruiting.
We were just talking to our Barrett Salee, and he said the players are the strongest recruiters. So you mentioned a couple guys there. Can you give us a couple more that might be following him to Texas in that class of 2023?
Oh man, Texas is in the middle of it for a lot of guys, and they've had some very busy recruiting weekends this past here in June. They've already committed his tight end Will Randall. They had speedy receiver Ryan Niblett in the fold, and this is going into a pretty big recruiting weekend for them, where they have the number one linebacker in the country, Anthony Hill, the number two player in the state. He headlines a big official visit weekend this weekend for Texas. They're trying to land offensive lineman Connor Stroh from in-state. They're in it for a lot of guys on defense. Malik Muhammad, Hunter Osborne, to name a couple. Michael Harrison Pilot is a dynamic receiver, two-way athlete that visited Texas last weekend that had a great visit. So, Texas, they're in on a lot of guys, and maybe this is a recruiting win that allows them to sneak in on some guys that maybe they were down the list on, but now Texas just got a little more exciting with the trajectory of their program.
It certainly did. Now, Steve, we were talking to a couple other people before we jumped on with you, and everyone seems to be a little surprised about the timing of this announcement. Are you surprised, or do you think it falls in line with what you were expecting?
Well, there was never a set timetable whenever he was ready. He took 4 visits to each of his finalists. So from that regard, I mean, what more could he have possibly seen? I think that there was some talk, if you talk to Arch or you talk to his dad or you talk to his coach, that they thought that this could maybe go into the fall. They weren't going to be held hostage by a decision before senior season, and alluded to, hey, maybe we want to see some teams play in the fall. But at this point, it doesn't surprise me that he made his decision, with the amount of times that he was able to go out and see his 3 finalists.
Of course, that Manning Passing Academy coming up very soon, too. So I'm sure he'll be talking in some of the guys' ears about, hey, why don't we go take a look at Texas there? Steve Wiltfong, thanks so much for joining us here on HQ with the breaking news. Arch Manning going to Texas. He's going to be a Longhorn, already with the hashtag Hook'em on his social media accounts. And for more on this, you got to check out 24/7 Sports. You can stay up to date with all the college sports news, recruiting, transfers, and more. 247sports.com.